Welcome back to Culture Unplugged, where the silence ends. I am the host, Uncle Chris, and on this channel, we discuss the real stories of those who have been harmed by hazing. So, those who can no longer share their voice anymore, the parents who live with the grief around their child who died from hazing or been harmed by hazing. We tell it all in that realm. So, if you're here and you've definitely want to know more about the video, I hope that you stick with us in this fight against hazing. So I'm a survivor of hazing myself, so I've also have dedicated this space really for the purpose of activism and advocacy. So if you believe that that's something that you support, go ahead and subscribe and like this video, because it'll help us to continue to get the message to reach more families. And I hope that you'll stick around with us. So this particular story that I'm going to talk about is one that I briefly talked about in a previous video in reference to the LSU's Max Gruver Act. But tonight, I would like to talk about the Max Gruver, who he was himself. He needed his own video. He needed his own story told, and his family has done some amazing things to help honor his legacy by activism against hazing. And so I just wanted to take the time to do that. Also, if you want to share your story with me, let's say you have been harmed by hazing in any capacity, please send me an email at coveredandcultured@gmail.com. I want to get the message, your story told. So I think that's very important. I've shared mine, and I think everyone should be able to be in that space. So don't go anywhere. This is where the silence ends. Before I begin, I just wanted to send a quick disclaimer and say this video is made with all love, light, respect, with the intent to dismantle hazing in any form. So I hope that this video resonates with you in that fight, and that you receive that in no other capacity than to help spread the word and awareness. So no disrespects to anyone involved, family and friends who knew Max. This is coming from a good place. So just hope that that makes sense. But if you have any questions or whatnot, just send me a comment. Before the headlines, there was Max, an 18-year-old from Roswell, Georgia. Funny, curious, the kid who made everyone laugh. He dreamed of writing for ESPN, and he had just started studying journalism at LSU. So when he joined Phi Delta Theta, he believed he was finding a brotherhood, but the brotherhood would take everything from him. So the pledges were summoned, to what members called Bible study. Each time they answered fraternity trivia wrong, they were forced to take up like a pull of 190 proof grain alcohol. So that's a lot of alcohol, by the way. But if you kind of see how like a lot of these rituals, these pledge rituals, they have some sort of connection. And let me go further, I'll explain. So by the end of the night, Max's blood alcohol level was 0.495. This is 6 times the legal limit, and he never woke up. So that's a lot of alcohol, to be that level of intoxicated. And there's no type of safety guards, no one who's making sure that people are at least safe in some capacity. That's where I draw the line, and it's so alarming to hear that that's essentially what hazing does. It has no type of accountability, and there's an immediate cover up. So let's go on with the story. So no one called 911 right away. I've heard this story so many times. Instead, the brothers cleaned the house and debated what to say. So they feared nothing when it come down to the actual act of, having someone over consume alcohol. But now you're telling me it's a big issue because, wait a minute, we can't wake him up. A silence that we've seen, of course, a case after case. It's wild. So when I first, learning about Max's story, I had to actually stop filming for a minute, because truly I've felt that fear that needed to belong, to be honest with you. And it breaks, it really breaks my heart, to be honest with you, to know that there are so many students that never make it home. it's not easy to do this work, by the way, because you have to think about it. You're not only telling your story anymore, you're helping to tell those stories of those whose lives been harmed, who've been robbed, sad stories, and that's the part that I need. I often need like a minute or two, a day or two, just to come back to filming, but I do it with love. I do it truly, truly to help, to spread these words of for folks who really need it. Some people who are in process right now who are pledging, and they are trying to understand whether or not this is really worth it. Like, is this really for me, or let me just understand, who else is really going through this type of stuff. So I get it if you're that person and you're locked in. I get it. I also get it if you're that person who says, how much is this really worth for me, my life? Does it really mean that much? I don't know. You have to decide that for you. But I will say that in this story, the aftermath is brutal. 5 fraternity members were arrested. Matthew Naquin, who organized the actual event, he was convicted of negligent homicide, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with part of it suspended. But Max's parents, this is where I really I'm happy to see, just through that pain, just say enough is enough. But his parents, Stephen and Ray Ann Gruver, they refused to let their son's story end there. So they launched the Max Gruver Foundation. So they turned the grief into purpose. Go parents. Their message was and is, love your friends enough to call 911. Love your friends enough to call 911. You see, I felt an issue, and I wanted to share that when we use the word friends, sometimes we can use it so loosely, because the people we think are our friends aren't really our friends. They're the ones who may be associates, but they're not necessarily the ones that really have your back. They're just people who are in your life, and if they could take what you have, they would. And they took this man's life. They took this young man's life. Jealousy breeds envy. I don't know if you ever heard that before, but you could have people that's jealous of you, right? And you can have people that are envious of you and will rob you, even your life. That's how scary it is. And I didn't want to go run on a tangent. I'm not ranting about it, but I'm really just saying that as I read that and I thought about that, and I said, keeping your friends, having your friends, love your friends enough to call 911. Love your friends enough to call 911. So think about that, right? Some people aren't really our friends. Okay. But they fought to change the law so no other parent would have to bury their child because of hazing. So the Max Gruver Act, this is important here, because this is like the before the prior legislation that's been there existing before Caleb Wilson situation came about, which is why we have to really address a bigger problem. Maybe, we have to really get aggressive with the southern states where hazing has been really intensified, because even after Caleb Wilson, let me continue on. But the Max Gruver Act made hazing in Louisiana a crime with real penalties, up to 5 years in prison and $10,000 in fines if it causes serious injury or death. So universities must report and suspend organizations involved. So that's what Caleb McCrae, one of the defendants of the Caleb Wilson case, what he could find himself really in prison for 5 years. Like, there was no type of understanding what the law was. I have to ask the chapter that was existing, the former Beta Sigma chapter, like, did y'all just say, hey, look, we don't care that law doesn't apply to us? I'm just trying to understand. So the law itself, that legislation is set because a loss of life already happened. So you have to really, I'm curious to find out from the parents, Maxwell Gruver's parents, how they feel about Caleb Wilson's loss, knowing that their son died just a couple years, prior. You know what I mean? A few years prior, 2017. Okay, so, but it's up to 5 years in prison, $10,000 in fines if it causes serious injury or death. So this wasn't just legislation. It was a lifeline, a law, really born really from loss. A family had to lose, unfortunately, everything for lawmakers to finally listen. And that's the part that really should never be normal. Did you know that since Max's death in 2017, at least 30 more students have died in hazing-related incidents across the United States? This includes the Caleb Wilson case. But even with the laws like this one, many colleges still underreport the cases or label them as disciplinary matters instead of crimes. So let's think about that. The headlines that's already been out there, they're not going to stop if we're not coming out as a family force, as demanding more from our schools, demanding oversight and transparency in the process of these young people who are trying to join these organizations, to make sure that they're spiritually protected. Okay. But yeah, at least 30 more have died in hazing-related incidents across the United States. Different campuses, as we know, same story. Stone Folds is one I've talked about as well on this channel. Bowling Green State University in 2021. Adam Oaks, VCU 2021. We had his father speak with us a few weeks ago, and he shared the painful grief that he endured knowing that his son is no longer with us. And it's a shame, because what happened in his story is that you have people that will try to take advantage of who you are, and who you are may not fit the same, masculine look, or may fit a certain type of person that you're not, because of whoever you are. He was a loving and sweet young man, and for him to go out like that, it's just so wrong. It's so wrong. And I feel for not only for his father Eric Oaks, but the many parents that we've just interviewed, but also many parents that I have just read their story and their grief and their pain. So my heart goes out to you immensely. I do this work because I could have been on that table, no longer breathing. That's essentially how serious my situation was. And anyway, so I hope this resonates. But let me just say also with Caleb Wilson, which was, of course, as we know, in Southern University, Baton Rouge, earlier this year. So this contributed to this constant themes I see, but excessive alcohol, no call for the help, the cover up, which is a major part that I have to address. Is the cover up really is to protect the ideology, to protect the system that puts hazing really where it survives, essentially, to protect the letters instead of the lives. That's the kind of stuff that we've got to really take action on. Is how do we prevent more attempts to cover up, or completed cover-ups completely, to make sure that no one is at fault for literally a crime where someone dies. So of course we keep hearing a couple of things. It was an incident, it was an accident. But accidents, they don't require the rituals, okay? That stuff is intended. It's an intended process, and the continuing of the harm that's being done is going to lead more people at harm, and more families are going to be dealing with that pain. And that's the kind of stuff. But what I love is the fact that his parents took action, and they vouched for son, and what they've done even across the country. They have shown up in many schools and universities especially, and just being a voice for their son Max. So true, my heart goes out to you both. If the parents are watching, or family who knew him. But you can outlaw hazing, but you can't outlaw the ego. This is about the culture, what we celebrate as loyalty, and mistake for this idea of what manhood looks like. But if your brotherhood requires the bruises, it's not a bond, it's bondage. So until students decide, leadership means protecting each other, loving one another, the laws alone, they won't save the lives. We've got to really start talking to these kids like in high school. That's the problem. It's like they're not being reached out to. They're already isolated with, at this point for a lot of them. But we got to start talking to our kids about hazing, about groups, about being a part of groups. If you know your kid, let me just say this too. If you're a parent and you're watching this, you know how your son or your daughter is in terms of just, if they're very impressionable, if they're very vulnerable, if they just always desired a group to be a part of a group. I'm just only speaking as someone who's definitely been there and know, where you may want to have friendship and seek guidance. You're going to go to places that seem popular and they seem like it makes the best sense in the world, but you find out that you're in this web or this trap, this where you just can't get out. But yeah, I think that, for parents especially, I need you to ask your child the right questions. What organizations are they joining? What do their traditions, okay? What do their traditions look like in terms of the organization? Start asking, get uncomfortable, get under their in their business, because again, if something happens to them, then you feel like you didn't ask or didn't get the time to make sure you pushed extra hard for them, you may regret it later, and I don't mean that to be crass about that, but I really think that should be a big part of your next step as far as when they're going to these schools and they're going to these hidden groups. What are they doing? But also, what is the school's policy on hazing transparency? They have a student government association. There are groups, councils who are over these organizations at the campus level. And so that needs to be addressed there. And of course, they're going to say, well, we have a student handbook. There's no hazing. Again, what's seen and not heard sometimes can be a danger. So that's where I think we need to get really into it and make sure that a full audit happens, when it comes to these groups. But for the students, if you feel, let me just say this, just talking to the students here, I want to hear from you, okay, in the comments below, especially. What are your thoughts on this story as far as Maxwell Gruver? What actions will you actually take to improve anti-hazing safety on the actual college campuses? Are you going to be a part of that? How do you feel about being a part of that? I need to know something. But also for students, if you feel unsafe, trust that feeling. Don't skip over it. This is something that needs to be addressed. You need to know that you're getting support. There really is no legacy worth your life. As someone who's gone through the process, who could have wouldn't be here talking to you right now, I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is to not play with your health like that. Do not let yourself be influenced by harm, because that kind of harm, it can be a predecessor for even worse destruction, including your life. But let me get back to Maxwell Gruver here. Max Gruver was 18 years old. 18 years old. My life didn't begin at 18. I'm 38 now. I'm 38. But I think about how much memory, how much life, how much I got to spend with my mom here on earth, how many birthdays and gatherings and trips we've done since I was 18. All that was robbed and stolen by this regime, this activity, this dangerous, ritual that has taken people's lives, even spiritually. It's just wrong. It's just really wrong. He should be, writing sports stories right now. Whatever his passions were, he should have been able to have graduated and moved on and be able to be someone big, maybe an attorney. I don't know, but his life should still be here. be the name of a law. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the part that's cruel for me. But there's peace in knowing that his life is, well, if his name will ever be thought of to protect someone from harm, which is where Culture Unplugged stands. We will always stand for the victims of those who have been hurt and harmed, for the parents who still deal with the weight of loss, knowing that their son, their daughter is never going to come home, that the many college celebrations that they'll witness, the many birthdays, families who just appear even, to be extremely joyful and happy, and they still have to know that they're coming back to a house where their kid is no longer there. That's rough. That's so rough, but I give them all the love, all the power. They are, they have had enough. They are, dedicating their life to advocacy, and they're doing it in such a way where it focuses on saying, I'm not going to let this win, right? So if you believe what happened to Max should never happen again, I need you to subscribe, share this video, help get his story out there, help someone who even going to a school in Louisiana or in another southern state that really needs to see this, if they're trying to join, be a part of an organization. Even any school, I should say, not even just a southern school, but any school where hazing has thrived, where potentially, and then if you want to protect, if you're a parent, you're watching this, you're saying, look, I need to protect my kid. I need to protect someone that could see this and, could be at least given a chance to really process it and think about it and say, is this really right for me? Do I really want to go through this brutal act of pain where I could get paddled, I could be forced to drink all this crazy stuff, eat all this weird stuff? You just don't know. Like, it's so much uncertainty with it. You just don't want to gamble your life. But again, also, let me just say this, okay? Support the Gruver family at the maxgruverfoundation.com. You can see that right there. But yeah, support them. Support giving them, pay them a visit and send them a donation if you can. Definitely, I'm sure it would really mean a lot to help save more young people in their fight. But, support the Gruver family. I hope this channel resonates with the Gruver family and anyone who knew Max is my full intent. I hope this comes across really as an olive branch and as a source of love, because that's essentially where I'm coming from. But support them and learn more through the stophazing.org and, of course, hazinginfo.org, which we have worked tirelessly in collaboration with, and we're so grateful for their collaboration. Really, God is moving, y'all. God is moving, okay? But this isn't just awareness, though. It's accountability. And this, as I like to always say at this time, this is where the silence ends. Good night.